Today's topic is graphing using slope-intercept form. You might ask yourself, what is slope-intercept form? Well, slope-intercept form is just simply when you have a two-variable equation such as 2x plus y equal 5 written in a specific way where y is alone and has been solved for on its own side, equaling the rest of the equation. So these two equations, y equals negative 2x plus 5 and 2x plus y equal 5, these two equations are the exact same equations. The only difference between this equation and this equation is in what we call slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is just when you have y alone on one side. Some examples of slope-intercept form are y equals 4x plus 1, y equals 2x minus 1, y equals 7x plus 4. Those are all in slope-intercept form because y is alone on its own side. The general equation for slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Now this can be kind of confusing to kids. They get very, they don't like this because there's lots of variables in it. However, this is the exact same thing as what these are, except for these have numbers, a number n for m and a number n for b. So this equation is the same as this, or it's written in the same order. That's what's important about the general equation. If you write a normal equation in the same order as the general equation, that means you're in slope-intercept form. So you might ask yourself, what's special about slope-intercept form? Slope-intercept form is special because when it's in this form where y is by itself on its own side, then the number that's in front of x, is the slope. This number right here is always the slope of your line, which we just talked about slope in the last section. So anytime you have an equation written where y is by itself on its own side, the number in front of x is the slope. And the slope is always represented with the letter m. So m is the slope. Also, when it's written like this, in this form where y is by itself, b is the y-intercept. B is always the y-intercept. We talked about graphing using intercepts. If you know what the y-intercept is, you know what one of your points is. If you know one of your points, you only need to find one other one. You only need 2 points to graph a line. So you know what the y-intercept is when you solve an equation for y and you put it in this form, in this order. That's what's special. So let's look at this. Y equals mx plus b. Well, we have y equals 3x minus 5. It's written in the same order as y equals mx plus b. Notice y equals, the 3 represents m, x, plus, minus, same thing. All right, doesn't matter if it's a plus or a minus sign. And then a number n for b. So 3 is the slope. So that means it's going rising 3 and running 1. And our y-intercept is negative 5. So our y-intercept is going to start us at negative 5 on the y-axis. And 3 is going to tell us how far up and how far over we're going to go on that line. Now what we're going to do is we're going to identify the slope and y-intercept of each of these equations. Well, it's pretty easy. We can just look at this example right here. Y equals mx plus b. We just talked about m being the slope. The number in front of x is always the slope. Well, let's find where x is. X is right here. That means 4 is the slope, and we'll represent that by saying m equals 4. And our y-intercept is always the number that's at the end of the equation. Well, it's positive here, so our y-intercept is 1. And I would like to see you write this 1 instead of just writing 1. Let's write the coordinate next to it. So the coordinate of the y-intercept, remember y-intercept, x is always 0, so the coordinate is 0, 1. Let's look at this one here. Again, the number in front of x, the 2, is the slope. So m equal 2, that's the slope right there. The y-intercept is always the number at the end of the equation. So the y-intercept in this situation is negative 1, which means our first point, or our y-intercept, is going to be 0, comma, negative 1, because we know a y-intercept, with a y-intercept, 0 for x is always true. X is always going to be 0 in that situation. Let's look at number 3. Y equals 7x plus 4. The number in front of x is 7, so that must be the slope. Because we have y by itself, it's in slope-intercept form, so the number in front of x is the slope. And the number at the end is the y-intercept. And we know that to be a positive 4. So that means our coordinate for the y-intercept will be 0, comma 4. And that's one of the steps we're going to use when we graph equations, is identify the slope and y-intercept of these equations. Okay, you might ask yourself, how do I get an equation like 4x plus y equal 10 in slope-intercept form? Well, it's very easy. We've talked about it. All you have to do is take this equation and solve for y by itself. So if we take the equation 4x plus y equal 10, it's not in slope-intercept form because y is not alone. Well, if we want to get it alone, we have to get rid of the 4x. Right now it's a positive 4x. Inverse operation says to subtract 4x from each side. So we subtract 4x from both sides. That means we're just left on this side with a y. And on this side, can you take 10 minus 4x? Well, no, because 10, it's not representing x's. 10 is just a number. And right here we have 4x's. They're not the same, so you just rewrite them. Negative 4x plus 10. And right there we have slope-intercept form. Y by itself equaling a number with x behind it plus another number. Y equals mx plus b. Here are some other examples of rewriting. You can go ahead and look through those. In this example we have x minus y equal negative 4. So again, you want to solve for the y here. In order to do that, you have to get rid of the x. It's a positive x, so they take this negative x and they subtract it from both sides. So you have just left x minus x will just leave you with a negative y left. And on this side you have negative x minus 4. Now notice they just flip those around. That's called the commutative property. So you can do that. Now you have to get y alone though. It's on the one side, alone, but it's got this negative sign in front of it. So you have to get rid of the negative sign by dividing by negative 1. Then divide by negative 1 on each side. Well, when you divide by negative 1 on this side, it cancels out and it's y. On this side, you have to take the negative x and divide it by negative 1 and the negative 4 and divide it by negative 1. Well, negative, negative, positive, x, negative, negative, positive 4. Slope-intercept form. This one's just a little bit easier. You have 2x plus y equal 1. Well, you got to get rid of the 2x. To do that, you're going to do the inverse. It's positive 2x, so you subtract 2x from each side and rewrite the equation. Y equals negative 2x plus 1. You might ask yourself, what if my equation looks like this? Y equals 10 minus 5x. Well, it's pretty simple. You got y equals 10 minus 5x. The commutative property, we just talked about it right up here. This is where we talked about it. The commutative property says take 10 minus 5x. Well, with addition or subtraction, you can take these two, both of these, and just flip them. Y equals negative 5x plus 10. The reason for that is it doesn't matter if you take 7 plus 3 or 3 plus 7, you still get 10. Now we're going to rewrite these equations in slope-intercept form. Negative 2x plus y equal 5. Well, we want to get y by itself. Okay, we're trying to solve this for y. And it's a positive. So we're going to have to add 2x to each side. That leaves us with y equals 2x plus 5. Y is alone on its own side. There's no negative sign in front of it, so this is in slope-intercept form. So y equals 2x plus 5 is in slope-intercept form. Let's rewrite this equation. We're trying to solve this for y. We want to get y by itself. So what we got to do is we got to get rid of the 2x first. Subtract 2x. Let's get rid of that addition or subtraction first. So that's going to leave us with negative 2y equal negative 2x plus 8. So now we have to just get rid of this negative 2. So negative 2 times y. Inverse operation says to divide by negative 2. Means you got to divide this entire side by negative 2. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So y equals negative 2x plus 8. Well, what's negative 2 divided by negative 2? Well, that would be just a positive 1. Negative 2 over negative 2 is just a positive 1, so we just left with an x. And 8 divided by negative 2, positive 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. So you get y equals x minus 4. Slope-intercept form. And the last one, negative 2x plus 3y equal 9. Again, get rid of the addition or subtraction first. It's negative, so we got to do the opposite. So add 2x. Remember, we're solving for y. So we get 3y equals 2x plus 9. Now we're going to divide each side by 3. So y equals, now 2 divided by 3, we can't do that. All right, can't do it, at least not without getting a decimal. So we're just going to leave it as a fraction, 2 over 3x. We can leave it as a fraction because we know slopes are rise over run, so it tells us our rise is 2, our run is 3. So 2/3, that works out perfect, 2/3 x. 9 divided by 3 though, 9 divided by 3 is just a positive 3. Slope-intercept form because y is by itself. Slope is 2/3, y-intercept is 3. Here are 4 steps to graphing a linear system using slope-intercept form. These 4 steps, if you use these 4 steps, you can graph an equation using slope-intercept form every single time. And we're going to use these 4 steps in the next few examples. Okay, we got this equation, y equals 4x plus 2. We're going to graph using slope-intercept form. Well, step 1 in that process says to rewrite the equation. Well, the equation is already in slope-intercept form because y is by itself. So we don't have to do any rewriting. So step 2 is to identify the slope. Well, I know the slope is in front of the x. The slope is the number in front of the x. So our slope is 4. And I can write that as a fraction. It'll make it even more helpful because remember, slope is rise over run. So 4 as a fraction is 4 over 1. 2 is the y-intercept. So my y-intercept is 2, but what would be more helpful is if I wrote a coordinate. 0, 2. Y-intercept is always the number at the end if you're in slope-intercept form. Let's look down here. It says y equals mx plus b, or move and beginning. Well, beginning sounds like a good place to start. So it's telling us to start at the beginning, which we know is the y-intercept, the far right side. So let's start with the y-intercept. 0, 2. That's where we're going to start. We're going to plot that point. 0, 2, right here. We already have one of 2 points needed. We only need 2 points to graph a line. So now it says move. Well, we started here at the beginning, it says. Started with the beginning. So now we're going to move whatever the slope tells us. The slope tells us to rise 4, run 1. So we go to our beginning, rise 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and run 1, and mark it. That's our second point on the line. And I can continue to do this as long as I want. Rise 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, mark over 1, run 1, boom. And I'm going to get something that is, I'm going to get these points that are in a straight line with each other. And the last step, all we have to do to graph it is just simply connect the dots. This is the easiest method for graphing an equation, graphing using slope-intercept. Now let's look at our last example. Negative 4x minus 2y equal 8. again, we got to solve for y. This one's not going to be as easy. We got to actually rewrite the equation so y is by itself on its own side. So let's write the equation first. Negative 4x minus 2y equals 8. First thing we're going to do is get rid of this addition and subtraction on this x here. So it's negative, so we got to do the inverse, which is 4x on each side, adding it. So we get negative 2y equals 4x plus 8. Well, now we can take this negative 2, get rid of it by dividing by negative 2. So we'll divide this by negative 2. I used that notation I used earlier. Remember, you could just divide this by negative 2 and this divided by negative 2. It's the same thing. So that's y equals, well, what's 4 divided by negative 2? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Positive, negative, negative 2. So 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. X. Plus 8. 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. So now we go to step 2, identify the slope. Slope is negative 2 over 1. Remember, slope is the number in front of x. We're going to put it over 1 because it makes it easier to look at our rise and our run. Negative 4 is the y-intercept. I would write the coordinate out. Negative 4 is 0, comma, negative 4 for the coordinate. Remember, never forget that negative sign. Now we're going to go to the b, the beginning, which is the y-intercept. Let's mark the coordinate. 0, negative 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Mark it. Now we're going to move from our beginning point, which we just marked. We're going to move, it says down 2. Remember, negative goes with the top. Down 2, and then to the right 1. So down 2, 1, 2, to the right 1. Down 2, to the right 1. Down 2, to the right 1. Now all we have to do is connect the dots. Connect those dots. And we've got our line.